Over the last decade or so, something has gone terribly wrong with the mental health of young people. It's not a slow drift, it's a sudden, sharp decline that really kicks off around 2010. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the leading theory for why this happened. This idea of a great rewiring of childhood itself.
Okay, let's dive right into the data because this chart, well, this is what many researchers consider the smoking gun. Just look at that dramatic spike in major depressive episodes for teen girls in the US. It's a classic hockey stick curve that starts right around 2010. And what's really alarming, this isn't just an American thing. We're seeing the same scary pattern all across the developed world.
So this just begs the question, right? What happened? I mean, what could possibly cause such a massive, widespread mental health crisis seemingly out of nowhere? That's the central mystery we're really going to try and get to the bottom of today. So the core argument here is that this wasn't just one single event. Instead, it's what some researchers are calling the Great Rewiring. The whole idea is that starting in the early 2010s, the very nature of childhood was completely transformed. It went from being play-based to being phone-based. And this really illustrates that contrast perfectly. On one side, you've got the play-based childhood. It's embodied, it's physical, you're interacting with people in real time, face-to-face. On the other side, you have this new phone-based childhood. It's totally disembodied, it's asynchronous, meaning you're not always interacting live, and it's all driven by getting likes and shares. We're talking about two completely different worlds for a kid to grow up in. And that brings us to a really crucial idea here, anti-fragility. Just think of it like a vaccine for your mind, or like lifting weights for your muscles. You need some stress to get stronger. For literally thousands of years, unsupervised play was that gym. It gave kids all these small, manageable challenges, figuring out a fight with a friend, taking a small physical risk. And that's how they built resilience. And that's exactly what's been lost in this big shift. Now, you have to understand, this rewiring didn't happen gradually. It was basically supercharged by a couple of key tech changes that all happened between 2010 and 2015. First, in 2010, the front-facing camera comes along, and suddenly your social life is a constant performance. Then, platforms like Instagram just explode, and that performance becomes a 24/7 reality for pretty much every teenager. Okay, so how exactly did this rewiring cause so much harm? Well, the argument really boils down to four foundational disruptions to how adolescents are supposed to develop. Think of them as four big cracks in the pillars of mental health. And here they are. Number 1, social deprivation. Number 2, sleep deprivation. Number 3, attention fragmentation. And number 4, addiction. The key thing to get here is that these aren't seen as just side effects. The argument is that these are the actual causes of that scary mental health decline we saw in that very first chart. And just to give you a sense of the scale here, let's talk about social deprivation. Since about 2012, the time adolescents spend with their friends in person has dropped by almost 50%. Let that sink in. 50%. That's a staggering collapse of the real-world hangout time that's so critical for learning how to be a person, basically. And this quote, this one really gets to the heart of the attention and addiction problems. The idea that our phones are dopamine slot machines. It's brilliant. Every notification, every unpredictable like, it's all designed to keep you pulling the lever. It literally trains our brains for distraction, not for the deep focus you need for, well, almost anything important. It's a design that's basically hacking our own brains. And this harm, it doesn't hit everyone the same way. The impact actually seems to be pretty different for boys and girls. For girls, the harm often gets turned inward, leading to things like anxiety and depression. A lot of that is driven by the constant social comparison on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. For boys, it often looks more like a withdrawal from the real world. They retreat into the virtual worlds of video games and pornography where they can feel more competent. Okay, but let's be fair. Not everyone in the academic world is 100% convinced that the smartphone is the one and only villain here. So, to really get the full picture, we have to look at the other side of the debate. And this is probably the most famous critique. It's called the potato problem. Seriously. Critics point out that when you look at the stats, the link between, say, how many hours you spend on social media and how sad you are is actually really small. In fact, it's about as small as the link between well-being and eating potatoes. So the argument is, hey, are we creating a huge moral panic over something that's statistically insignificant? But then there's the rebuttal, and it's a powerful one. The idea is that a tiny effect on one person can become a massive public health crisis when nearly everyone is exposed to it. Think about lead and gasoline. A tiny bit of lead exposure might only knock a few points off one person's IQ, which is hard to even notice. But when you do that to an entire generation,
It's a national catastrophe. Same logic applies here. And there are other really important questions being asked, too. For instance, could it be reverse causation? Maybe anxious kids are the ones who retreat into their phones, not the other way around. What about all the other big stressors out there, like economic anxiety or school shootings? And if phones are the culprit, why isn't the trend exactly the same in every single country? These are all totally valid points that make the whole picture a lot more complicated.
So even with all that debate going on, there's a really powerful movement for change that's gaining a ton of momentum. And it's all built around this one core idea. This isn't about individual kids or parents failing. This is a collective problem, and it needs a collective solution.
And this really gets to the heart of why it's so hard to fix. You can't just tell one kid to put down their phone. Why? Because if all their friends are still online, that kid is now totally socially isolated. It's a classic collective action problem. So individual willpower just isn't going to cut it. You have to change the rules of the game for everybody.
So what would that look like in practice? Well, here's the proposed path forward. It's 4 clear foundational norms. The whole point is to protect kids during those super vulnerable developmental years and basically give them back some of that healthier, play-based childhood we've been talking about.
And get this isn't just an idea on a slide anymore. We're seeing real policy momentum. By early 2025, you had more than 20 states already moving to restrict smartphones in schools. You've got big states like New York and California taking major action. This shows a really rapid, really significant shift in how we're starting to think about kids and phones. When you boil it all down, the ultimate goal here is to restore a state of mind. It's about shifting an entire generation out of what you might call defend mode, where they're always anxious, always scanning for threats, and getting them back into discovery mode. A mode where they're curious, they see opportunities, and they can actually grow into confident, thriving adults.
Which really leaves us all with this final, really challenging question. This great rewiring of childhood. It happened completely by accident. It was just an unintended consequence of incredible new technology. So the question for us right now is, can we find the collective will to rewire it all over again, but this time do it on purpose?